That's right. Back at it again. Full custom hot dog wishing you a happy new year. We're going to be kicking off 2019. It says that. 1/1/2019. We're going to be kicking it off with a Blu-ray review of an old film from 2018, Ready Player One, which is an interesting film to sort of talk about. I'm actually kind of glad I picked this up. I picked this up off Amazon for $5. If you're not familiar with the way I do things, I like to talk about the quality of the release first, and then I go into the film. So here we go. Ready Player One, directed by Stephen Spielberg, released in 2018. This is released by Warner Brothers. This is I mentioned I picked this up for $5 off Amazon, which there's worse ways to spend $5. In fact, I once spent $5 on Dragon Ball Evolution and $5 on Dylan Dog at a Big Lots. And so for $10 I had the worst movie night imaginable. But no regrets except for Dylan Dog. I regret buying that. Dragon Ball Evolution's kind of a nice oddity to have in there, much like I would like the Super Mario Brothers movie. But anyways, that's another episode, probably. Let's talk about this release. This looks and sounds fantastic. I mean, it's a new movie. It's shot digitally, digital recreations of actors and sets and everything, and it looks fantastic. It really does pop, and it flows well. And I want to say it's aged well, but it hasn't even been a year since it's been released, so it looks pretty good. Special features wise, though, this disc is actually kind of well packed, though not enough of what I would normally want on my discs. There's no commentary, which this movie kind of needs. Not needs of course, but a film where Steven Spielberg gets to play with his own toys and something that he's sort of influenced so much, you know. His commentary would have been wonderful. And even if there was a special feature where they kind of kept telling you what everything was from, just rapidly pointing at everything that had references, you know, and it told you what it was from, I would have loved that as a special feature. I'm actually kind of surprised that isn't there, because having it break down the film all the way down to every single reference point, I think would be kind of cool. And granted, you could probably do that on Wikipedia. I had seen a large chunk of the list before this movie came out. I didn't look at all of it. Some people were posting it online. A lot of people want to know what was in it. But yeah, I think that'd be really cool on the contents of the disc. However, it's not here. Bummer. But what we do have, according to the back of the box, are over 90 minutes of bonus content, loaded with Easter eggs. Now, I didn't poke around for the Easter eggs. I didn't even think of that. But the content that I did experience is actually pretty cool. I'll break it down from a list I found on Blu-ray.com, which is a pretty good source for Blu-ray info if you don't use it. They also break down sales and stuff, which is kind of neat. There's a chunk, a little 5-minute featurette called The 80s, You're the Inspiration. Ernest Cline. I'm going to be reading this off of Blu-ray.com, by the way. Ernest Cline and the film's cast and crew discuss their love for the 80s. There's one called Game Changer, Cracking the Code, 57 minutes and 22 seconds long. So that's obviously the long one. An in-depth exploration of the entire movie, beginning with the original writing, moving on to adapting it to the screen, assembling the cast, performances, realizing the Oasis, blah blah blah. So literally top to bottom of the film, which is very cool, because you get to see some real interesting stuff here. Ernest Cline talks about how there was a bidding war for this, which is unbelievable, which I'll talk about later. So yeah, it's pretty neat. The cast talks about everything that they went through for the shooting and stuff. Then there's another featurette called Effects for a Brave New World, that's 25 minutes long, which is, to me, the highlight of all these special features. Because to be honest, I don't really care about how Ernest Cline mashed a bunch of 80s references together, you know. That's not interesting to me. But what is interesting is the way Spielberg shot this, which they show on this Effects for a Brave New World featurette, which they mocapped everybody, created a digital set, and Spielberg went in there with a VR headset, and he kind of would point at stuff and say, I want this like this, I want this higher, this lower, we need this like this. And on the spot, they were able to manipulate the room he's in. And I just thought that was wild. What an interesting thing. It makes sense, of course, but you know, I hadn't heard of that before. So super cool. Something called Level Up Sound for the Future, just talking about the sound design, stuff like that. That was pretty alright. High Score Endgame, which focuses on the film's score. And then Ernie and Ty's Excellent Adventure, which is Ernest Cline and the star Ty Sheridan sitting down to discuss the film before its Austin premiere, which is pretty okay again. They just sit about DeLoreans and talk. I don't know, it's whatever. But you know what? For a big budget film, and though it doesn't have the features that I would really, really want, which is what I said, a commentary and something to point all the references, even though it doesn't have that stuff, and a commentary would be so great. It's a solid release for a big budget studio picture. If I liked this movie a lot, I would have paid $10 and have been okay. Even 12. I thought this was worth it for me for 5 because I didn't love it. So I'm gonna give this a B or a B plus, and I only say that because of lack of commentary. I think that's a cardinal sin in film, especially with something like Ready Player One. And here's why I say that. So, well, hold on. Before I get to any of that, of why I want the Spielberg commentary, let's talk about what Ready Player One's about. Let's see. According to IMDb, which this is very interesting to note, by the way, that IMDb, if you go to Ready Player One's IMDb entry page, it is still decked out with Ready Player One advertisements as if the movie's about to come out, which is very crazy because I'm wondering how much they're spending on it, if they even forgot that they're spending money on decking out IMDb to look like Ready Player One. Very, very bizarre to me. Anyway, according to IMDb, the plot synopsis reads as, when the creator of a virtual reality world called the Oasis dies, he releases a video in which he challenges all Oasis users to find his Easter egg, which will give the finder his fortune. So pretty basic, pretty run-of-the-mill story. Red Letter Media kind of summed it up as, you already know how this is going to end before it ends, which is kind of fine. I mean, this movie's more about the ride than the destination. It kind of starts off with a really cool race scene, which I liked a lot actually. I was really into it and surprised, and I don't think the rest of the movie really matches that intensity. But we've got a solid cast all around. I didn't even get to talk about the cast. I mean, directed by Stephen Spielberg, who you already know from anything. Ty Sheridan, who played Cyclops in the newer X-Men movies. Olivia Cooke, who was in Bates Motel. Very talented cast. Ben Mendelsohn, who we've talked about in that stupid Ryan Gosling directorial debut. And then that other stupid Ryan Gosling movie. Well, okay, it's not stupid. Place Beyond the Pines is fine. We've talked about it. You can watch that episode. T.J. Miller, who's famous for things like the Emoji Movie, Deadpool, and I think he called in a bomb threat. Simon Pegg. Mark Rylance, who plays Halliday, who's the kind of the Willy Wonka-esque figure. And I only say Willy Wonka-esque because the plot is essentially Willy Wonka. But Mark Rylance plays him. And while watching it, I just kept thinking that dude looked familiar, and I couldn't place him. He kind of acted like Eugene Levy in A Mighty Wind, which is kind of rad. But yeah, so great talents all around. The movie itself is interesting because on paper I want to hate it. I hate my nostalgia being force-fed to me, and the times when this film loses me in two different spots. It loses me when they pick up stuff and they go, this is blank from blank, and this is blank from blank. Like, I don't need you to tell me what stuff is from. I think that's even kind of a bad call, and I get why you might do that. But just seeing stuff in the background, like there's scenes where you'll pick out a Battletoad or something, that's really cool to me. That worked for me. That really tickled what I didn't want to be tickled. That was a no-go zone. And it also loses me with the live action stuff. And I know you're thinking, hot dog, that's part of the point. It's part of it's the virtual world, and part of it's the real world, but I really don't care about the real world in this movie. I like the virtual world. I really like the CG in this. The animation I thought is really cool, and I really liked it. It almost felt like it kind of reminded me of AI in a way, with the same kind of dark sci-fi stuff. Obviously this is CG where AI was not, but similar type of feel for me anyway. But I didn't hate this, and I was ready to, and when this came out in the theaters, I wanted to see it, not because of any of the nostalgia stuff. In fact, anything I read from the book just seemed awful to me and terrible. But I really like the idea of this book being so influenced by the 80s and Spielberg. Because, when you look at 80s film, there's a lot of Spielberg on the classics, So having Steven Spielberg be able to direct this movie that's essentially a love letter to him, where he gets to come back and play with all his toys, I think is really neat on paper. There's some scenes where that kind of comes in very cool. As much as I hate to admit it, I liked seeing the DeLorean in the race scene, just because it felt like Spielberg was so stoked to be able to do that. There's some cool bits that are some neat surprises that I won't spoil, and they bug some people concerning a certain horror franchise. I won't spoil it because that's not what I do. It was spoiled for me. I think it's a really neat surprise, though, especially given the fact that Spielberg loved Kubrick and Kubrick's work so much, So I think that just kind of makes it sweet in a way and not so tacky as it may seem. But I don't know. You can let me know what you think about that in the comments, of course. But yeah, so me talking about how seeing Spielberg play with his toys, that's why I really want a commentary for this film from Spielberg. I would love to hear him talk about it at length. I think that'd be really interesting. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of this movie, I'd probably give it like a 7 out of 10 score, just because I had so much fun in certain parts and it was kind of neat. Some of the humor I think was overplayed and which was very unnecessary, but there's some good chunks in here. So, I don't know who to recommend this to, but I'm sure if you see the trailer, you're going to know immediately whether you want to see it or not. But I think if you're on the fence and you may have fond memories of the 80s, it may be worth a watch just to kind of see what's poking around in the background and stuff. I thought it was kind of neat to see those things I once loved given new life. So, anyways, pretty solid release all around. Very surprising for a big studio to do, as we know. But it's Full Custom Hot Dog here. You can holler at me on Twitter. Full Custom Hot Dog without the last O because it is just too long for Twitter. And trying to think, I feel like I've got some stuff coming up, but I can't remember offhand, so I apologize. This episode was actually very hard to do. I think I've done like 7 or 8 takes of this episode talking about Ready Player One. So let me know what you think in the comments. I'm always very curious, especially with a film like this. I feel like everyone's going to have either a love it or hate it opinion, or I don't know. There's definitely reasons to dislike this, though. Like I said, the nostalgia stuff, all that. But yeah, let me know what you think, and hopefully I'll have some more reviews coming up for you throughout the week. And I've got more to talk about, more that I've seen. I've got a nice backlog finally. So I will talk to you soon.